Hey Chris, this is Joe. This is your own personal video. So let's go look at this problem. Now we already talked about some of this, but let's just go ahead and refresh. The problem is it's right over here, and it's 4 times 2x minus 9. Let's put some spaces in there. Minus 4x is equal to 4 minus 6x. And I'm typing this into Grapher, so when I hit the return here, typically it'll either try to graph something or it'll give me an error. If it gives me an error, just ignore that stuff. So that's our equation right there. And we said that the first thing we're going to do, putting up a new equation, is to multiply through. So the 4 times the 2x will give us an 8x. We already knew that. And then we're going to have 4 times negative 9, which is negative 36, or minus 36. And then we have the negative 4x, which we're not doing anything with. Actually, we're not doing anything with the rest of this stuff. So this is equal to 4 minus 6x. Okay. We went from 4 main terms, 1, 2, whoops, went a little farther there, 2, 3 was the 4, and negative 6x was the fourth term. We went from 4 terms to 5 terms. So 8x, negative 36, negative 4x, 4, and negative 6x. All right. What we now look for is what I call a pivot term. Pivot term sort of determines what we do next. Now, these linear terms are unknowns. So this is 8x, negative 4x, and negative 6x. And those are our unknowns. Usually we want to get all of the unknowns on one side and all the knowns on the other. The knowns are the constants, negative 36x, sorry, negative 36, and 4. Okay, so if we move this term across, it's going to become positive, and basically this is our pivot term. The pivot term is the big one, so that's the 8x. So if we move the 6x, the negative 6x across, it becomes positive. But then we don't want this negative 36 here because it's a constant. We move that across and it becomes positive. So if I go ahead now and do that, my 8x stays where it is. I can move my 6x across, and when I do that, it changes sign. The term will change the sign when we move across the equal sign. And the negative 4x was already there, so we're going to just say minus 4x. Equals, now on the other side the 4 was already there, so it's not going to change its sign, it stays a positive, but the negative 36 is moving across the equal sign, so that becomes plus 36. Okay, and that's where we're at right here. We were discussing, actually I guess we got to the next line. Then we simplify, and we had that 8x plus 6x is 14x, minus 4x will give us 10x. And on the other side, we have 4 plus 36, which is 40. Okay? All right. Now, the next thing that I was trying to tell you about was the fact that I was trying to show you another type of sliding, and that had to do with factors. So before we talk about that, I just want to remind you 5 is equal to 5 over 1. 7 can be written as 7 over 1. 11 can be written as 11 over 1. Basically, anything can be written over 1. So if we had, just for a matter, A would be A over 1. Not over 2, but over 1. Okay, now it's giving me an error. Just ignore that. Okay, and so if I want to talk about 10x, then I can say 10x is equal to, well, I'm going to write it as 10 over 1, and then we can put the x on top. So 10x over 1. Okay? The other thing is, so that's this left side. We can write that as 10x over 1. And the right side is 40, and I think you see from the numbers that we can write that as 40 over 1. All right? So we're really going to do these two things to that equation. All right, so let's do that right now. Let's put up a new equation. We're going to have 10 over 1. I have to do the 10. If I do it the other, let me show you what happens if I do it the other way, why I'm not doing it that way. If I do 10x over, oh, that actually did it the right way. Forget what I was saying. 10x over 1, and then equals 40 over 1. And the reason I'm doing this is it's a very simple reason. I simply want to show you that when we look at this equation, when we're looking at 10x equals 40, it's the same thing as 10x over 1 equals 40 over 1. In other words, what I'm trying to emphasize here is that the 10x is on top. Also, the 40 is on top. So now here's the rule for sliding factors, because factors are anything that's multiplied or divided. So the 10 is a factor of this term, the x is a factor of this term, and even the 1 can be thought of as a factor for this term. Now I want to get the x all by itself. That's my goal. Now typically what they tell you to do is to divide both sides by 10, and we can do that. That'll cancel the 10s here, and we'll get 40 over 10, which will be 4. But another way to think about it, a faster way to think about it, is simply to think about taking this 10, this 10, and sliding it from the top across the equal sign to the bottom. In other words, from wherever position it is to the opposite position. So if it was on top, it slides down to the bottom. If it was on the bottom originally, then I'd slide it to the top. I could do the same thing with the 40. If I wanted to move the 40 to the other side, it would go to the bottom. So it would be 10x over 40. Okay? But my goal here is to get the x by itself, not to put more stuff with the x. So I'm going to move the 10. The 10 is going to go downstairs over here. So my next equation will look like this. It'll look like x over 1 is equal to 40 over 10, because I moved the 10 from this position to this position. So it ends up over here. And then, of course, the last step is x over 1 is just x. We know that from all of this stuff we talked about here. Okay? So we will have x over 1, which is x, is equal to 40 over 10, which is just 4. Note we can cancel the zeros, literally just cross them off, and we have 4 over 1. You can always do that if basically you just have the two terms, or sorry, the two factors, top and bottom. Okay? And so that's our solution, x equals 4. All right. Let's just go over to the book now, and I'll just finish off this problem. Now, in my opinion, you don't need step 3. Not if you're confident in your algebra. Now, I don't recommend it for a test, but for doing your homework and then maybe just going and checking the answer, it'd be fine. Now, the last thing that they're doing here is they're simply sticking the x equals 4 into the left-hand side. That's what LHS stands for, is left-hand side. So by left-hand side, they're talking about this. So if I stick a 4 in for x, basically that's what this is, 4 times the quantity. And notice they just use square brackets. That's another way of using a specific set of parentheses. It's just another set of parentheses, and it's very clear that this is the front end of that parenthesis and this is the back end. That's the reason they're using it, because we can tell that this one goes with this one. Okay, so and the reason they did that is because they wanted to use a parenthesis instead of the x. They wanted to put in parenthesis 4, because then it indicates 2 times 4. So we have 2 times 4 minus the 9 that we see up here. And then we're also going to have minus 4x. So we're also going to have negative 4, and the x is going to be replaced again by 4. And so then they just multiply this all out and calculate it. There's 2 main terms. We can see that. And this is the inside of the first term on the right-hand side of this equal sign. So what we're going to do is the 2 times 4 first, and that's 8. And we can even subtract 9 right away and get to negative 1. Yeah, let's even keep going. We can even keep going. So 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. So what we've done is we've simplified this first term down to negative 4. Then we simplify the second term to 16. They did that right away, actually negative 16, minus 16. And they just kept that all the way down to here. And then finally at this point where you have the two main terms simplified, you can then actually do this last step of negative 4 minus 16, which gets you negative 20. All right, so that's the left-hand side. The right-hand side, all we got to do is put a 4 in for this x. And so we have the right-hand side being 4 minus 6 times 4. That second 4 is our x. So this becomes 4 minus 24. 6 times 4 is 24. And then 4 minus 24 is negative 20. Since the left-hand side is negative 20 and the right-hand side is negative 20, that is our check, so to speak, and that means it's correct. That tells us this. It doesn't tell us that it's the only solution. It doesn't tell us that, but it does tell us that x equals 4 works. Okay. Now, it turns out that because this is a linear equation, there could only be one solution. Well, that's not quite true. There could be an infinite number of solutions. That's a possibility. But you could not have, say, 2 solutions or 3 solutions or 4 solutions only. You could have one. You can actually have no solutions. You can have one solution, or you can have an infinite amount. Now, is that any of that obvious from just looking at equations? And I'm going to tell you no. You need to understand graphs to know that. Okay, and I'm not going to discuss that at this point, but I'm just going to say that in this particular case, I can tell you that there is only going to be one solution, and this is it. We've found it. So there is nothing else to find. This is it. Now, again, whether you do the check or not, again, that's sort of up to you. I don't think you need to once you're good at your algebra, but on a test, probably a good idea to do it anyway, just to make sure you're getting it right, because any little mistake could have happened up here. Okay, I'm going to go post this video for you and let you know that it's up there, and hopefully that'll help you get through it, and we'll get around the nastiness of Skype. Okay? Have a great rest of the day.